Jake Humphries, PSP NRL. We have 15 minutes this week to get through all of the games for round 22. We've had 2 excellent weeks in a row, and we're going for another big one this weekend. I'm using a different platform just because there was some issues with the audio on last week's podcast. I don't know if anyone told me about that or if anyone noticed that, but I just tried to listen to it on my computer, and it sounded a bit dicey, so I'm going to try out Spreaker this week, which has got a 15-minute limit. Just because I'm not paying for an account. So we've already chewed up 30 seconds, so we'll get straight into it. This weekend we don't have the lineups to go off, but it's very important for me and for you guys to get an early look in at these lines and potentially snag some favourable numbers before they start to move, because just like every sport, NRL in particular, lines do move a lot closer to kickoff. We're going to start on Thursday night with the Canterbury Bulldogs versus the Parramatta Eels. This one is an interesting one for mine. These two teams played each other probably about 6 weeks ago, and the Eels won it by a single point off a Mitchell Moses field goal, I think it was. Could have been Corey Norman, actually. Can't quite remember. However, it doesn't really matter. The Eels come into this one as a 7.5-point favourite. That's very steep for me. That's a lot of points to cover. I actually like the Bulldogs in this game right off the bat. The reason being is because, like, the Bulldogs lost by 8 points last week against the Panthers. They were probably a little bit unlucky to not be closer in that. However, they just weren't good enough in attacking positions, and Will Hopewadi squandered a kick, and Peachy dived on it, and kind of, the rest is history. Like, the Panthers got a bit of a late cover, depending on what line you were on there. I actually quoted that I like Penrith minus 7.5 in the pod last week, and that obviously kicked for us. Not that it was an official bet, but obviously it was something that I did want to bet on if I was going to take a play on that game. The reason I like the Bulldogs in this one is simply because the Eels, a lot of people like to overthink things, and they like to talk about spots. They like to talk about capitalising on certain situations, and I think that's true. I think that's something that you do have to do. It's not always important, but if you ask somebody on the street about the Parramatta Eels right now, they're going to tell you the Eels are phenomenal. They're really good. They've won 5 straight. They beat the Broncos last week. They beat the Broncos by 14. They turned things around. They're such a strong team. But it's going to be very interesting to see how the Eels are able to back that up. Like, if you play a very taxing game against Brisbane on a Friday night, and you come back 6 days later, and play against a team like the Bulldogs, who, if you're not on your game, they can frustrate you and they can kind of, tip the scales in their favour. Look, as far as the casualty ward goes, both of these teams are going to be pretty healthy. Sam Cassiano and Adam Elliott are I'm going to say they're both questionable in this game, which that will be something we'll need to look at. But just early on, I like the Bulldogs with the points. They covered the points last time these two teams played. I just think they're a tough team, and Parramatta, their for and against is really, really bad, which speaks to their inability to blow sides out. So I don't see them beating the Bulldogs. I don't see the Parramatta Eels beating the Bulldogs by that many. And they could even lose outright. I think it is a bit of a letdown spot for the Eels. And I think you'll find that a lot of people who are intelligent punters will be wary of this spot for Parramatta. Moving on to the St George Illawarra Dragons versus South Sydney Rabbitohs. This one's going to be interesting because we're not sure what's going to happen with Sam Burgess. I think you'd probably want to shut down Sam Burgess now, although I said the same thing about Angus Crichton, and they haven't done that to him yet. He's still playing. So I'm really not sure what they're going to do with him, because he kind of wasn't able to make it through the entire game last week due to a rib injury that's just been brutal for Sam. I don't know if he's going to play in this game. It is going to be important, his presence, obviously. The Dragons, they're looking relatively healthy. Last week they were pretty bad. I thought they were really, really lucky last week. I'm unlucky last week. I just hated the fact that they were on the wrong side of a couple of 50-50 video ref decisions, and the Knights got awarded for the Knights got awarded for milking situations where the Knights players were lying in the ruck, and I just hated that. I thought that the Knights got a severe rub at the green last week. I probably like the Bunnies in this one with the 6.5 points, just because the Dragons, in my opinion, aren't really built to blow teams out. Like, I know they smashed Manly, but this one's at the Sydney Cricket Ground, I believe, which is a kind of a famous venue for these two teams, and I don't think there'll be that much between them. I'm going to have a quick look at the history between these two teams when they play each other. Souths by 10, Dragons by 2, Souths by 16, Souths by 6, Souths by 19, Souths by 20, Dragons by 4. So you have to go back to round 6 of 2011 to find the last time the Dragons beat the Rabbitohs by more than 6 points. And I know that this situation does favour them, but if the Rabbitohs come out with a half-decent lineup, if they have Reynolds, they've got Johnson, they've got Walker, Crichton, if Burgess does decide to play for this one, it's going to be very interesting. I think the Bunnies can definitely keep this close. So at least starting off, I like both underdogs in the first two games. North Queensland Cowboys versus the Melbourne Storm. The Cowboys are catching 6 points here as a home underdog, which is always a pretty good spot to grab someone. However, I think you'd be pretty silly to fade Melbourne after what we saw last week from them. I personally like the Storm in this one. Do I like them to cover the 6? Well, maybe. There's no, in my opinion, there's no real limit to what they can do at this point in the season. They are really flying high. They've got their players back. I'm not sure what's going to be happening with Billy Slater. I think he's probably going to play. Billy Slater, concussion around 22. Yeah, so he's going to be scheduled to play this weekend, which just makes the Storm even more dangerous. I personally like the Storm to cover 6, and I like them head-to-head in this one as well. So we'll just cruise by that. The Cowboys, they were good in the first half last week, but got rolled in the second half. And, even though they've got the home field advantage, I don't think anybody I don't think anybody should be tipping against Melbourne at this point in the season. Newcastle Knights versus the New Zealand Warriors. Right off the bat, I have a play for this game. It is the over 41.5. You talk about a game in round 22 where, the Knights have obviously got a bit to play for in terms of, morale, and so do the Warriors. And I guess the Knights are still probably thinking they could get off the bottom of the ladder, although the points would suggest it's almost impossible. However, based on what we saw last week from the Knights, they're still going to try. The Warriors, well, I don't really know. It's interesting. Ryan Hoffman. They're going to be able to score points against Newcastle just because, if you look at this fixture historically, this year they've played each other. It was 26-22, 50-14, 40-18, 24-20, 24-14, 28-22, 38-16, 28-12. So, these fixtures have always been high scoring. The total here is 41.5. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to say the Knights are going to score 20. The Warriors will be able to score 20. They've still got blokes who can score tries, the Warriors. I think someone like Solomon Kata will probably cross for a try. I think every single time the Warriors have played the Knights, pretty much in the last 2 years, I've taken the over. And I'm going to continue to do so, to be honest with you. I think that in this game it's going to go over, and I'm very, very happy to take it right now because I can guarantee you it will not close at 41. So that's what we're going to get on right now. We've got the Knights and the Warriors over 41.5. And we're going to play that one for 2 stakes, okay? So keep that in your head. As for who's going to win, I think probably the Knights, to be honest with you, but we're going to play the over. Next, Gold Coast Titans versus the Brisbane Broncos. Broncos have got no Andrew McCulloch, which is a big injury. However, the Titans basically got a fork stuck in them by the Tigers last week, so you don't really know what they're going to be doing in terms of, effort. The Broncos are probably going to welcome back Corey Oates. And they could welcome back Cody Nikorima, who had a hip injury, who missed last week, I think. Andrew McCulloch's out for the season, which is a huge out for them. I'm not sure who'll play hooker. Just kind of think about what's happening with their roster. But, I don't think they've had to deal. I think McCulloch's played nearly every game this year. He's played most of them, so that might be a bit interesting for them. As for the Gold Coast Titans, Conrad Harrell's still missing. Chris McQueen's out for the season. And they've got to go to Suncorp for this one. No, they don't. Sorry, this one's at Seabus Super. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I hate this game, personally. I don't like a side in it. I'm going to skip right by it because I don't trust Brisbane at the moment. And even though the Titans just got knocked out of the finals, I think they're still going to be quite motivated to play against a fellow Queensland side. So I'm not going to touch this one at all. We're just going to move on. We've got 3 more games left, and we'll talk about them in the remaining time that we've got. Cronulla Sharks playing host to the Canberra Raiders. The Sharks are a -5.5 favourite. James Maloney's still out. Farmano Brown won't be playing, which will probably put Jack Bird in 5'8". The Canberra Raiders, they've beaten Cronulla in their last, not sure how many trips to the Shire. 1, 2, 3... 4 out of the last 5. So they've won 4 out of their last 5 games at Cronulla, the Raiders have, which does definitely mean something to me. Even though the Sharks have been good at the nation's capital, the Raiders have liked travelling here. Maybe it's a bit of a Ricky Stewart thing, I'm not sure. But all I know is the Raiders are probably going to be playing with a bit more desperation. Josh Papali's going to be back. Jordan Rapana's back. The Sharks, yes, are missing James Maloney. And the Sharks do struggle to put teams to the sword. I know they did it last week and the week before kind of thing, like they kind of came away with it at the end, but I personally think if you can get the Raiders +6 here, I like it. It's something that I'm probably going to take. I'll write up the cards soon once we get the lineups coming out, but I like the Raiders with the plus points, and that's the end of that. 4 minutes left, and we'll get into the next game, which is arguably the game of the round, the Manly Seagulls versus the Sydney Roosters. Manly are in a bit of trouble at the moment. I think they need to be very careful because they can miss the finals, especially if they don't. Well, this is obvious. This goes without saying, but if they don't start winning games soon, they're going to find themselves outside the top 8 because the Panthers could creep up on them, and the Dragons are only a win away from overtaking them because the Seagulls for and against isn't that crash hot. George Shafil is out for the season. Curtis Sirenden's still not back, but other than that, they're quite healthy. The Roosters, this is a real interesting one. Boyd Cordner is scheduled to play this week. He's supposed to come back this round. Jake Friend is still out for another week, and Michael Gordon, he won't be back till the finals. So Boyd Cordner playing in that game would be huge for them. Manly have won this fixture earlier in the year. They've actually won 2 in a row against the Roosters, and something like 4 out of their last 5. So I don't know if I'd say they've got the wood over the Roosters, but I think that they know how to beat them, and I think this one's going to be quite low scoring. However, it is an afternoon game at Brookvale. It's going to be a dry track, I'd say. So it's interesting. I'd probably like Manly +2 in this one, but that's dangerous for me because the Roosters showed last week that they're a pretty genuine side, and they took it to a team like the Cowboys, who are arguably a top 4 squad, even without Thurston. They took it to them and really steamrolled them in the second half. They've got a great forward pack, and I think Manly obviously has some liabilities in the forward pack, and they've been bad recently. They got smashed by the Dragons, and then obviously yesterday they got towered up by Melbourne. So Manly have taken some bad hits there for and against recently, and I actually don't think I can touch Manly. So I'll probably leave this game out, to be honest with you. And then the last game, which is an interesting one, we've got son Nathan Cleary playing halfback for the Panthers against father Ivan, who's coming in to coach the Tigers. This one's got all kinds of underlying storylines to it, but I guess the most important thing is the Panthers are red hot. They're playing good footy. I think that the Panthers will win this game. It's this tricky one for mine, actually, because the line is 10, or 10.5, which is a lot of points for the Panthers to have to win by. And they haven't really been blowing teams away. They beat the Titans by 8. They beat the Bulldogs by 8. They beat the Warriors by 12. They beat Manly by 8. So obviously the Panthers are going for their 5th straight win, which is a very timely... Look, the Panthers are going to win this game, in my opinion. And I think it's probably a good position to grab the Panthers at $1.30 and potentially pair them with somebody else, because I don't see the Panthers losing this game. However, I don't know if I'm willing to take them to cover 10.5 against the Tigers team that's been playing quite bravely lately. So I think I like the Panthers head-to-head, and I could potentially multi them with Melbourne. So if you, for example, were to take the Panthers head-to-head and the Melbourne Storm head-to-head, I'll just get the odds up now. You'd be looking at... Sorry, my computer's lagging badly. You'd be looking at $1.95. So, you pretty much double your money there. So I like something like that. So with a minute left, we'll go back through. I like the Bulldogs +7.5. I like the Rabbitohs +6.5. I like the Storm -6 and head-to-head. I like the Knights Warriors over. That's an official play for 2 stakes. I don't like anything in the Titans-Broncos game. I like the Raiders +6 if you can get it. I don't like anything in the Manly-Roosters game. And I like the Panthers head-to-head in that game versus the Tigers to potentially be paired with something. So sit yourself down for 14 minutes, give it a listen, tell me what you think, and we're going to have another good week.